Life has a way of breaking us. Sometimes it happens suddenly, a loss you never expected, a betrayal you never saw coming, a door that slammed shut when you thought it would swing wide open. And sometimes it happens slowly, like a weight pressing on your soul until you feel cracked under the pressure. In those moments, it's natural to ask a why me? Why now? Why this? But what if brokenness isn't the end of the story? What if the very thing you thought would destroy you becomes the thing God uses to shape you into something beautiful? Think about it. A seed has to be buried and broken open before new life can grow. A potter has to press, bend, and reshape the clay before it becomes a masterpiece. Even stained glass windows, those breathtaking mosaics, are made from shattered pieces, joined together to create something greater than the original. The truth is, God never wastes a hurt. Every tear, every setback, every disappointment, He can redeem it. Your brokenness can become the birthplace of blessing. Your wounds can become the testimony that heals others. But here's the challenge. In order for God to use our brokenness, we have to place it in His hands. Too often, we try to hide the cracks. We pretend that everything is fine, we push people away, or we numb the pain. Yet God says, bring me your broken pieces. Don't hide them. Don't throw them away. Put them in my hands and watch what I will do. There's a freedom that comes when you stop resisting and start surrendering. Brokenness in God's hands doesn't mean defeat. It means transformation. That's when you start to see how the pieces of your life, your past mistakes, your painful losses, your hidden struggles can be woven into a bigger story. So maybe today you feel like you're too far gone, too messed up, too shattered to ever be whole again. But remember this, broken crayons still color, and broken people in God's hands can still change the world. Don't despise the cracks. Don't despise the scars. They are proof that you survived, and more than that, they are places where God's light shines through. Because when you put the broken pieces of your life into the hands of the one who created you, He doesn't just fix you. He makes you new. He builds something more beautiful than you ever imagined. Brokenness is not the end, but the beginning of transformation. When life shatters our expectations and we feel like everything we've built has fallen apart, it can feel like the closing chapter of our story, the loss of a job, the ending of a relationship, the failure of a dream. These moments leave us questioning our worth and our future. Yet in God's design, brokenness is not final. It is the very soil where new beginnings can take root. We often resist this truth because no one enjoys pain, no one prays for disappointment, and no one welcomes heartache. Yet in those moments of deepest pain, when everything else has been stripped away, we often find the clearest picture of who we are and who God is shaping us to become. When something is whole, it often feels secure, but it may also remain rigid. A vessel that has never been broken may sit on a shelf unused, admired perhaps, but never truly filled. But a vessel that is cracked and surrendered can be mended in ways that allow it to carry more than before. The process of breaking reveals weaknesses we might not have acknowledged and dependencies we didn't even realize we had. In those revelations, God begins His work. Brokenness strips us of pride, of self-sufficiency, of the illusion that we are in control of everything. In the empty spaces left behind, God has room to pour in His strength, His wisdom, and His grace. Transformation rarely comes in moments of comfort. It comes in the crucible of difficulty, in the fire of testing, in the loneliness of the midnight hour when we cry out for answers and receive silence that teaches us to wait. Waiting in brokenness is hard because we long for quick solutions. But transformation is not instant. It is a process. Just as a seed must be buried, cracked open, and die to its former state before new life springs forth, so too must we pass through seasons where we feel undone before new growth appears. The seed never knows the beauty of the flower it will become. And in the same way, we cannot yet see the full beauty God is shaping through our broken places. When we look back at our lives, it is rarely the moments of ease that shape us most. We grow in resilience when we have faced challenges. We deepen in compassion when we have known sorrow. We become more patient when we have had to endure long seasons of waiting. The very qualities that make us more Christ-like are not developed in the absence of pain, but in the midst of it. Brokenness is the doorway into these deeper layers of growth. It is through being emptied that we learn to be filled, through weakness that we discover true strength, through sorrow that we come to know joy in its purest form. There is also something about brokenness that draws us closer to others. When we admit our pain, when we stop pretending and start living authentically, we discover that we are not alone. The cracks in our lives often become bridges that connect us with others who are walking through similar struggles. Suddenly, what once felt like shame becomes a story that encourages. What once felt like isolation becomes the foundation for community. In our brokenness, we are reminded that humanity is shared, that suffering is not unique to us, and that healing can come as we walk together. But perhaps the most profound transformation that begins in brokenness is how it reshapes our view of God. In seasons of success, it's easy to rely on our own abilities, to assume we are steering the course. Yet when life collapses and our efforts fail, we come face to face with our need for something greater than ourselves. Brokenness awakens us to dependence on God. It forces us to listen, to trust, to lean not on our own understanding. In that dependence, faith grows stronger. We begin to see God not as a distant figure, but as a present help in our time of need. Every story of transformation has its moment of breaking. The butterfly must struggle to leave the cocoon. The gold must be refined in the fire. The clay must be pressed and molded before it takes shape. These images remind us that breaking is not purposeless. It is preparation. It is the necessary stage before the beauty of what's next can emerge. In the breaking, there is hidden potential. In the breaking, there is the foundation for becoming new. When you reflect on your own life, the very moments you once thought would ruin you may have been the moments that prepared you. The heartbreak that taught you resilience, the failure that made you wiser, the loss that gave you compassion for others. These moments reveal that brokenness is not about destruction, but about formation. It breaks apart what is false, shallow, and temporary so that something real, deep, and lasting can be built in its place. God never wastes a hurt. He redeems every pain for a greater purpose. Pain is one of the most universal human experiences. It comes in many forms: the sting of rejection, the ache of loss, the weight of disappointment, the wounds of betrayal. We often wish we could avoid it altogether, as if life would be better without it. Yet pain, when surrendered to God, becomes one of the most powerful tools for shaping our lives. What seems meaningless to us in the moment is never wasted in His hands. He takes what was meant to harm us and turns it into something that heals, restores, and blesses not only us, but also those around us. Every scar tells a story. Scars are proof that you survived something that could have destroyed you. But beyond survival, scars can become testimonies of redemption. What once was an open wound, raw and painful, over time becomes a mark of strength, a reminder of God's faithfulness in carrying you through. That scar then becomes a message to others who are hurting, showing them that healing is possible, that life does not end with pain. What you thought was only your private suffering can, in God's hands, become a gift to someone else walking the same road. Never waste your hurt, because He intends to use it far beyond your own story. When you look through history, some of the most impactful people are those who carry deep wounds. Out of grief came movements of compassion. Out of suffering came works of art, acts of justice, and ministries of healing. People who have been through brokenness often possess a depth that cannot be taught in a classroom. Their words carry weight because they come from lived experience. Their presence brings comfort because they know what it is to be in the valley. This is how God redeems pain, by allowing it to shape us into vessels who can carry hope to others. There are seasons where pain feels wasted. You may walk through a hardship and wonder what good could possibly come from it. In those seasons, it can feel like silence from heaven. But redemption is not always immediate. Sometimes the fruit of your pain is not visible until years later. Like seeds planted deep in the soil, what looks like death may be the very process that is preparing for a harvest. God sees the bigger picture when all we see are fragments. He knows how each trial, each loss, each heartbreak fits into the larger design of your life. It is important to realize that God does not cause every hurt, but He does use every hurt. Life on this earth is filled with imperfection, with choices people make that harm us, with circumstances beyond our control. God does not delight in your suffering, but He promises that nothing is wasted. Even the pain inflicted unjustly can be transformed into something that brings life. He is able to take ashes and create beauty, to turn mourning into joy, to bring purpose out of what once felt purposeless. When we trust Him with our pain, something shifts. We stop asking only, why did this happen? And start asking, how will you use this? That shift does not minimize the hurt. It honors it, but it also opens the door for redemption. Our wounds, once surrendered, can become wells of wisdom. Our struggles can become stepping stones for growth. Our failures can become lessons that prevent others from stumbling in the same way. Redemption is God's specialty. He is a master at taking the broken pieces of our lives and building them into something strong enough to carry the weight of His glory. Think about how many times you've grown stronger through trials. The patience that came from waiting in seasons of unanswered prayers. The compassion that grew when you sat with someone else's pain because you knew what it felt like yourself. The resilience that emerged when you got back up after life knocked you down. None of those qualities would have developed without the hurt that preceded them. What felt like wasted pain in the moment was actually the ground where new strength and character were formed. There is also a ripple effect to redeemed pain. Your healing becomes someone else's hope. When you tell your story of how you came through the storm, it lights a path for someone still caught in the darkness. When you extend comfort out of the comfort you once received, it becomes a lifeline for another soul. God wastes nothing, not even the parts of your life you wish had never happened. Those very chapters can become the most powerful pages of your testimony. The beauty of redemption is that it does not erase the past, but redefines it. Pain that once felt like it would define you forever becomes the very thing God uses to refine you. The memory of what you walked through no longer carries the same sting because it has been transformed into something with meaning. What once was heavy now carries weight in a different way, a weight of wisdom, empathy, and grace. And over time, you begin to see how the pieces that felt shattered are actually part of a mosaic only God could design. A broken mirror still reflects light. A broken vessel can still carry water. A broken person can still carry purpose. In God's eyes, you were never discarded because of your cracks. Instead, those cracks become part of your unique design, testifying to the power of a God who can make all things new in surrender. Beauty emerges not because the brokenness disappears, but because it is transformed. The pain may still be part of your story, but it is no longer the whole story. What once defined you in shame now defines you in grace. What once isolated you now connects you with others. What once broke you down now builds you up in ways you never thought possible. This is the kind of beauty only God can create, the kind that doesn't erase the scars but redefines them as signs of survival, healing, and purpose. Your scars and cracks become testimonies that reflect God's light. Every person carries scars, some visible on the outside and many hidden deep within. These scars represent battles fought, losses endured, mistakes made, and seasons of suffering survived. Our instinct is often to hide them, to cover the cracks with a smile or bury the memories so no one can see the pain beneath. Yet the remarkable truth is that the very scars we try to conceal can become the clearest evidence of God's grace at work in our lives. What once seemed like a mark of shame can, when placed in God's story, shine as a mark of His faithfulness. Scars mean healing has taken place. A wound left open is still raw, still painful, still vulnerable. But when it becomes a scar, it carries proof that the body mended, that the bleeding stopped, that what once was unbearable has been survived. In the same way, emotional and spiritual scars bear witness that even though the hurt was real, the healing was greater. These scars whisper to others, I have been through it, and I am still standing. That testimony can be more powerful than any sermon because it is lived truth. People resonate with authenticity, and scars make us real. They say we are not perfect, but we have walked through pain and come out with a story to tell God's light shines best through cracks. Imagine a clay pot, whole and flawless, sitting on a shelf. Wink it. It may be useful, but it allows no light to pass through it. Now picture a pot that is cracked and broken, but placed over a light. Suddenly, the light spills out of every crack, illuminating the darkness around it. Our lives are much the same. If we were flawless, there would be no place for God's glory to shine through. But it is precisely through the cracks, our weaknesses, our wounds, our struggles, that His light becomes visible. Instead of hiding the cracks when we allow them to be seen, others encounter the brilliance of God's power working through imperfect people. The world values strength, perfection, and polished appearances. But strength without struggle can feel cold, perfection without pain can feel distant, and polish without authenticity can feel shallow. People are not drawn to flawless stories, they are drawn to real ones. When someone sees your scar, they see not just the wound, but the healing behind it. They see that brokenness does not have to be the final word. Your scars become a bridge of hope, letting others know they too can make it through. The light of God does not shine in spite of your scars. It shines because of them. There is also a humility that comes with scars. They remind us that we are not invincible, that we have been hurt and needed healing. That humility creates space for compassion. When you know what it feels like to be wounded, you are more tender toward the wounds of others. Instead of judging or dismissing, you extend grace because you understand. In this way, your scars do not just tell your story, they equip you to be part of someone else's story. The comfort you received becomes comfort you can now share. The crack in your life becomes the entry point where someone else sees light and finds encouragement. Some scars carry deep pain even years later. There are losses we never fully stop grieving, mistakes we never fully forget, traumas that left permanent marks. But even these, when surrendered to God, can serve a purpose. They can remind us of His presence in the valley. They can keep us anchored in gratitude for the strength we did not know we had. They can make us resilient in the face of future storms because we know we have survived before. They may never completely fade, but they can be transformed from sources of bitterness into sources of strength. But if He did, the lessons and growth they brought would vanish with them. Scars remain as reminders that pain was real but temporary, that weakness was real but overcome, that brokenness was real but not final. They remind us that God's light is not only something we receive, but something we reflect. Every time we share our story of what we endured, that reflection grows brighter and others find hope in it. There is a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, the artist fills them with shimmering metal, making the vessel more beautiful than it was before it broke. The cracks are not erased, they are highlighted. What once seemed ruined becomes a unique masterpiece. This is what God does with our scars. He fills them with His presence, and they become radiant with His glory. Our lives may never look like they did before the breaking, but they become more beautiful because of the breaking. The very cracks we despise become the channels where His light shines brightest in God's hands. Broken people can bring healing, hope, and change to the world. The very things we often see as disqualifications are the things God can use as qualifications. Our culture tells us that power belongs to the strongest, the most talented, the most polished, and the most impressive. But throughout history, God has consistently chosen ordinary, flawed, and broken people to accomplish extraordinary things. The reason is simple. When perfection accomplishes something, the credit goes to the person. But when brokenness accomplishes something, the glory goes to God. Broken people understand pain, and that makes them uniquely positioned to help others who are hurting. A person who has walked through grief can sit beside someone who is mourning and offer a depth of comfort that someone untouched by loss cannot. A person who has faced addiction and found freedom can look into the eyes of another still trapped in chains and say with credibility, "You can make it through this." A person who has endured failure and found redemption can speak hope to someone who feels stuck in shame. In this way, Brokenness becomes a source of healing, not just for the one who experienced it, but for countless others who are touched by their story. When you are willing to let God use your brokenness, you become a living testimony. Your life ceases to be about projecting an image of perfection and instead becomes about reflecting His grace. People don't need to see more flawless examples. They need to see real lives that have been transformed. That authenticity breaks down walls. It opens hearts that would otherwise remain closed. When others see that God could use someone as imperfect as you, it gives them hope that He can use them too. And hope has a way of multiplying. It spreads from one person to another until it changes communities, families, and generations. The impact of broken people does not come from their strength, but from their dependence on God. Dependence creates space for divine power to flow. A cracked vessel cannot hold water on its own, but when filled continuously, it can still pour out onto others. In the same way, broken people who stay connected to God become channels of His love, His wisdom, and His compassion. Their very weakness becomes the proof of His strength, and their ongoing need becomes the reminder that everything good flowing from them comes from Him. There is also a unique courage that rises in broken people who have been restored. Once you have survived what you thought would break you forever, fear begins to lose its grip. You stop living timidly because you know you've already endured worse and come through it. That courage fuels boldness. Broken people often become the ones who stand up for justice, who speak truth with compassion, who advocate for the voiceless because they know what it feels like to be unheard. They have walked through valleys and refused to remain silent while others suffer in theirs. Change often begins with those who are willing to step forward, not in spite of their brokenness, but because of it. Their lives become proof that redemption is possible. Their presence becomes a safe place for others to bring their own pain. Their actions create ripples that go far beyond what they will ever see in their lifetime. What once felt like a private struggle now becomes a public blessing. And in this way, God takes what was meant to break you and turns it into something that builds up others. Your brokenness is not your disqualification. It is your platform. It is the stage on which God displays His power and the channel through which His love flows into the world. Every time you choose to share your story instead of hiding it, every time you extend grace because you know what it feels like to need it, every time you reach out to lift someone else because you've been lifted yourself, you are participating in a greater purpose. You are becoming an agent of healing, a carrier of hope, and a catalyst for change. And that is the beautiful mystery of God's design. He does not require perfection to do His work. He delights in using the weak to shame the strong, the broken to bring wholeness, the overlooked to make an impact no one could have predicted. The world may value polish, but God values surrender. The world may reward strength, but God rewards faith. The world may overlook the broken, but God builds through them. And when broken people allow themselves to be used by Him, the world does not just see their cracks, it sees the light of His presence shining through them, or to them. So if you feel broken, if you feel disqualified, if you feel like your mistakes or your pain have taken you off the path of purpose, remember this truth. In God's hands, nothing is wasted. Your past can become someone else's future. Your pain can become someone else's encouragement. Your brokenness can become the very thing that brings healing, hope, and change to a world desperately in need of it. That is the power of surrender, the beauty of grace, and the miracle of being used by God. And if He can use broken people to change the world, then He can use you too.